I made the decision. I checked with the shift commander, and I jumped on ambulance 1 to just give a second set of hands as being a paramedic myself, just being able to hopefully help if there was any advanced interventions that needed to be done or needed to be performed.
What happened?
And just a second set of hands.
What happens next?
So I got in the back of the truck. I was actually still in civilian clothing at the time because I had just walked in the door. So I got in the back of ambulance 1 in the patient compartment. The other 2 gentlemen were up front driving to the scene. I actually had to don my turnout gear because, again, I was in civilian clothing. I wasn't quite ready to go. So I had to put all my structural turnout gear on and then my Canton Fire jacket. Once I was sufficiently dressed for the call, I started prepping all the gear that we might need for a call such as that, for an unresponsive male in the snow. In this case, it was our first in bag, our airway bag, and our cardiac monitor. Everything was all together. They were all in 3 separate bags. But on the way there, I just got in. I didn't know how their night had gone, so I just took a real quick look at everything just to make sure everything was there, and everything was exactly how it needed to be. So I was able to just grab all 3 bags, put them on my person, and get ready to, so as soon as the ambulance was on scene, just step off and go to work.
Not knowing much information about what you're going to confront, what goes through your mind as you prepare before you get off the ambulance?
Just basic scenarios. I mean, again, unresponsive male in the snow could mean several things. Not having much to go off on the dispatch was, it left much to be desired in terms of what we might need. So in gathering all the equipment together, that can kind of cover all the major bases, if you will, in terms of what we were expecting to meet once we got on scene.
How was your focus before you get off the ambulance?
I was ready to go. A dispatch like that, any unresponsive male in the snow, it can kind of up the level because you just don't know what you're walking into. You know, it could be anything.
In the back of the ambulance, you can't see outside. Could you tell anything about the weather conditions based on the way the ambulance was moving?
Again, being in the back, as you noted, it just seemed to be taking a little bit longer than normal. I really had no visibility at all. Like I said, I was in the patient compartment. It's very limited visibility in the back, and it's limited visibility. There's like a peephole that's maybe 1.5 by 1.5 to kind of peek up front. But again, I was so busy getting everything together, I really didn't notice. But I did note it took a little bit longer. We were going not slow, but we were going cautiously.
When the ambulance finally stopped and the doors open, tell the jury what you see.
So as I mentioned, I had the 2 bags and the cardiac monitor, so 3 pieces of equipment with me. And I stepped out of the back of or the side of the truck. There's a back compartment, or a back door, and a side door. I stepped out of the side door. And I immediately noted the wind had picked up and the snow seemed to be heavier. And I could hear like a distant screaming off in the distance. Wasn't exactly sure where it was coming from.
What was the visibility like?
It wasn't great. It was still dark out. The sun had not come up yet. The snow was coming down, as I said, heavily. And it wasn't great all around.
Was it cold?
It was cold. Yes, sir.
And so when you hear the screams, what do you do next?
I started making my way kind of towards the sound, following the sounds. I couldn't see anybody yet. So I just kind of followed the sounds. And then once I was able to get around the side of the truck, that's when I was able to see a group of 3 individuals with Canton Police. And I started making my way over to them to see where the patient might be located and what was going on.
As you get closer, tell us what you see.
So as we approached the scene, as I said, there were 3 individuals, and Canton Police were on scene as well. And then there was what appeared to be a human figure laying supine in the snow. I'd say about 6 to 8 feet, kind of where the sidewalk met the front lawn of a residence.
What does supine mean?
So that he was laying on his back. Okay. From there, I made my way directly over to that individual and started checking for signs of life.
How do you check? Do you get close? Do you get down on the ground?
Yep, so I knelt right at his head. Typically, to check for any signs of life, it's just as you see in TV or anything like that. You check the carotid pulse. and you check for any signs of breathing or anything like that.
Where's the carotid pulse?
So the carotid pulse would be right in the neck. Like just real quick, 2 seconds, you can check either side. They're on both sides. Those are the strongest pulses that you can grab quickly. So I just real quick went right to that gentleman. Like I said, I looked for any signs of breathing. I found none. I checked a carotid pulse, and I found none.
How was his skin to the touch?
He was very cold to the touch.
He wasn't warm?
No.
And so after you touched his cold skin and you felt the carotid artery? Is that how you
Yes, sir, carotid artery.
Did you come to any initial quick assessments or conclusions in your mind?
So I found, like I said, I checked for signs of life, the carotid, the signs of breathing. I found none. From there, we had ascertained that there is no signs of life. As I was checking that, the other 2 individuals on the ambulance came and met me, and they began doing the same thing, just to check. I mean, sometimes you can look and you can miss. So the other paramedic, Anthony Flamati, started checking my work, and then we kind of went from there. But I found no signs of life in my initial.
So firefighter paramedic Flamati arrived to this person after you did?
Yes, sir. I was the first one to actually put hands on the individual and check for signs of life.
Did you later learn the name of this man?
I did.
And what was that?
John O'Keefe.
After you found no signs of life for John O'Keefe, did you get up and go to speak to anybody?
I did. So as being a second set of hands on the call, it's really not my call, like in terms of treatment modalities and how we want to progress. So after I found no signs of life, I kind of got up to kind of look around real quick. I went over to the individuals, the 3 individuals that were there, and just said, hey, I just have found no signs of life. We're going to see the next steps. And as I was saying that was when Anthony Flamati, who is the lead paramedic on this, made the decision this is a workable cardiac arrest.
Let me ask you 2 questions. The first is, as a paramedic firefighter, are there times when you're the lead paramedic on a call?
Yes, sir.
And so it changes call by call, but this one was firefighter or paramedic Flamati's lead?
Correct. He was the lead paramedic on this call.
There are other times when you're the lead and firefighter or paramedic Flamati is on your crew and you lead?
Yes, sir. So we typically switch off. We'll do one, and then once my rotation is complete, we'll do the next one. So it's patient for patient, typically.
When firefighter paramedic Flamati called you back and said it was a workable situation, can you explain to the jury what that means?
Yes. So in medicine, there is a term that is you're not dead until you're warm and dead. Meaning your core temperature, your core body temperature has to be within normal limits for it to be considered a futile attempt at resuscitation. Noting that, Tony, the other paramedic, Tony Flamati, realized that this gentleman was very cold to the touch and that this was now a hypothermic cardiac arrest, or a cardiac arrest in a hypothermic setting, which means as providers, we have a duty to initiate life-saving measures, CPR, ventilation, and continue those efforts until we get him to a hospital and a physician is able to take over and they are able to monitor his core body temperature for a certain amount of time.
I want to ask you about a term you used. You said a hypothermic situation. As a firefighter paramedic treating a patient at the scene, you're not diagnosing hypothermia, are you?
No, sir.
So you're not making a medical diagnosis. You're just saying it's a hypothermic situation because of why? Just
because of the conditions. He was extremely cold to the touch, and he was in the elements. We didn't know how long, so taking the fact that he is extremely cold to the touch and he had been outside for an unknown amount of time, that quantifies it to us as a hypothermic arrest or a cardiac arrest in a hypothermic setting.
Is there anything about Mr. O'Keefe's fingers or hands or his face that gave you any indication if he had been there just recently or had been there for a while?
His fingers were quite cold. They were not well perfused at all. They were
what
very,
does that
very.
mean? I don't know. What does not perfused mean?
Sorry, there did not appear to have been any blood flow at all. Just because he was, again, presumably being outside, his fingers were very, very white. They were very stiff, which can be signs of hypothermia and frostbite. And again, touching the neck. So typically, when you get cold, you kind of work back from your extremities in. So again, I noted his fingers were quite cold, but also when I checked his carotid, his neck felt quite cold as well. That just kind of tipped us back further down the road of a hypothermic cardiac arrest.
I see. When firefighter Flamati called you back,
Yep.
where did you go exactly?
I went, so when I was told that this is what we're doing, I turned around and I went right back to where I previously knelt, which was right at Mr. O'Keefe's head. And then I took over the ventilation aspect of a cardiac arrest. So I was in charge of the airway. So I began giving him positive pressure ventilations with a bag valve mask, which is just a glorified balloon that you can push oxygen through and down into your respiratory tract to get oxygen moving. While I was doing that, I believe firefighter EMT Kelly had begun CPR.
So is this fair to say it's a team effort?
Yes, sir.
A coordinated effort?
Very much so.
And depending on where you're placed, whether in the back of the ambulance or driving or leading, does everybody have an important role to play?
Yes. Yeah, we work in conjunction with each other. Typically, the most well-defined roles in a cardiac arrest in EMS is your airway monitor, which was myself in this situation, and then your cardiac and medication administration, which is, that would be Anthony Flamati, that would be Tony. Just because of my position at the head, I just took over the ventilation aspect, and that was where I remained throughout the call.
You said you went back to try to help Mr. O'Keefe, and you were helping at the airway. Do you have to actually get on the ground to do that?
Yes, sir. I was kneeling at his head.
While you were kneeling at his head, well, let me ask you more of a background question. Is it helpful to get information about the history of the person when you're trying to treat them when you happen upon a scene and you don't know the history?
Yes, sir, very much. Getting information on medications, history, and allergies is our top priorities in any call, not even this call, just really any your run-of-the-mill fall or chest pain. That's typically the first questions that we ask. What medications are you on? What medical history do you have? And do you have any allergies? The medical history is important because if you've had heart attacks in the past, or just using a generalized example, if you've had heart attacks in the past, does this feel like a previous heart attack? It kind of gives us something to go off of.
As you were kneeling, I want you to take us to that moment. As you're kneeling, trying to help Mr. O'Keefe, did you have a chance at any point to look up?
I did.
And when you looked up when you were trying to help Mr. O'Keefe, can you tell us who you saw?
I saw a middle-aged middle-aged female with blood on her face. And real quick, as I was in the process of providing ventilations, I said, do you know this person?
The person that you looked up and saw that was standing over you with blood on her face, do you recognize that person in this courtroom?
Yes, sir.
With the court's permission, sir, could you point out that person that you looked up and saw?
In between Mr. Jackson or next to Mr. Jackson.
I see. And when you looked up and saw that person and asked about any background, what did she say to you?
I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
How clearly do you remember her words saying to you, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
I remember it very distinctly.
You've been to a lot of calls over the years and since.
Yes, sir.
Would you say hundreds or thousands?
Thousands.
Do you remember all of them?
I remember aspects of various calls, but not all of them, no.
Do some stand out more than others?
Yes, sir.
Did this particular moment stand out more as compared to your typical or most calls that you've been to?
It did, just because of the setting. I mean, it was It was the weather, it was the unknown factors, and it was the attempting to try and get information and not really being able to glean anything from that.
After the defendant said to you, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, did you ask any follow-up questions?
I really didn't get a chance to, because following that, the individual just kind of walked away, or just kind of went in a different direction. I wasn't able to ask any follow-up questions.
Have you ever received any police training?
No, sir.
Are you a police officer?
No, sir.
When you're helping a patient, do you have any interest in detective work?
No, sir.
Do you have any interest in investigating potential crimes?
At that time, in this particular instance, because I was at the Airway, that is a pretty critical aspect of a cardiac arrest. I was stuck there. I couldn't get up and kind of follow up on that at all. I was there doing that ventilation.
Is it your job to investigate cases or simply to get information to help treatment?
Just the information.
When you go out as a firefighter paramedic, do you have a purposeful cause?
Yes, sir.
And what is that?
To save lives.
And is that your only focus?
In this instance, it was attempting to restore circulation and breathing.
At some point with your colleagues, did you lift Mr. O'Keefe from the ground?
We did.
When you lift him, what do you put him on?
So we put him on, it's called a scoop stretcher. It's basically just a hard plastic moving device with some seatbelts on it, just to get the patient up and onto the stretcher, and then from there we can move from the stretcher to the ambulance.
After you lift him to the stretcher, tell us what happens next.
So we put Mr. O'Keefe on the scoop stretcher, and we were able to get him onto the stretcher itself and then off to the ambulance. From there, I maintained my role as the Airway individual on this call. So we made our way to the ambulance. I got in the tech seat, which is directly behind where the stretcher locks in. So I had access to the Airway again. I was continuing to provide positive pressure ventilations to Mr. O'Keefe, and we had put in an OPA as well, which is just a plastic hook, if you will. It just keeps the tongue from falling back into the airway, so we can continue to provide positive pressure ventilations. Once we got him in the truck and we continued that effort, we set up a suction system, and we prepared to intubate Mr. O'Keefe. We prepared a suction system just because as I was ventilating outside of the ambulance, there were some secretions in the airway that I could see, and you could kind of hear it as you go to squeeze in breaths into the individual. You can kind of hear the secretions kind of getting like bubbly and stuff like that. So we knew we were going to need to suction him. So we got him in the truck. We really quickly suctioned him, and then we were able to intubate him successfully to definitively give him an advanced airway and give him better ventilations, get more oxygen into his system.
Now, you mentioned that he wasn't warm, he was very cold.
No, he was still very cold.
What does the team do to try to assist with that?
The most basic thing that we did, we turned the heat on as high as it would go. We also stripped all of his clothing off, just getting all of that wet clothing off of him. I didn't really have a role in that particular part of it, just because once you're on the airway, that is kind of yours. Nobody can breathe for him, so every time I squeeze that bag, he gets a breath. So I'm kind of tied to that airway for the duration of the call.
So when your colleagues are stripping the clothes off him, is your attention on the clothes or more on the airway in your job?
No, I'm maintaining the airway. If an endotracheal tube is dislodged for whatever reason, it is typically more difficult to get one in. So the integrity of that tube staying where it is and not being dislodged, that is another key aspect of airway management.
As you're doing that, do you notice what anybody else, any of your colleagues are doing to help?
Like I said, they were working on clothing removal. I believe they were also getting intravenous and intraosseous access on this individual to begin medication administration. But again, I was quite focused on that airway, just making sure that it was maintained and we didn't lose any tube. We didn't lose any end-tidal CO2, which is just another monitoring device that we use to confirm that tube is in place.
How quickly do you get to leave the scene and start moving towards the hospital?
I honestly couldn't give you an accurate estimate. it didn't seem to be out of the ordinary realm, though. We were able to move within the flow.
In addition to Mr. Keefe being very cold, did you notice any other injuries on him?
So I noted that he had a hematoma right above his right eye.
Could you explain to us what that is?
Yep, it's just, for lack of a better term, it's just a big egg. He had a pretty good bump over his eye.
And you said his right eye.
Yes, sir.
Did you know how that hematoma was caused?
No, sir.
No idea?
No.
In addition to the hematoma above his right eye, what other injuries did you see?
There were also several scratches on his right arm, just below his shoulder, and traveling down his right humerus. They terminated right about his right elbow, just above it.
Those scratches, have you also described them as abrasions?
Yes, sir.
Is there any difference in your mind, difference between scratches and abrasions?
Nope. These were they were deep, and they were not bleeding, but they were notably deep.
Did you ever describe it as furrows?
I did.
And in describing those scratches, do you have any idea how they were caused?
No, sir.
Okay. And did you notice any other injuries on Mr. O'Keefe?
No, sir. Those were the only ones that we noted. As I mentioned, we suctioned a little bit of blood out of the back of his airway as well. I believe it was blood, mucus, and saliva. But those were the extent of the injuries that I was able to note.
Did you notice anything about the back of his head?
Actually, yes, I did. I apologize. There seemed to be a little bit of matted blood around in his hair around there. Really didn't see anything too obvious at the time. He was also placed in a cervical collar as well, following intubation, and that was kind of there just to maintain his cervical spine. But there was, like I said, there was noted to be a little bit of dried blood on the back of his head.
At some point, did you finally make your way with Mr. O'Keefe to the Good Samaritan Hospital?
Yes, sir.
And just share with us what happens when you get there.
So after we got there, we handed off care to Good Samaritan Medical's physicians and ER nurses. We were able to give a report to the physician of just basic what we've done, what we've given for medications, in my case, what he was intubated with, and how he was being ventilated, how well he was being ventilated, and any other further pertinent information. Typically, we noted that Tony was the lead paramedic, so that is typically his. He kind of holds the room for a minute when we get in there and gives a big rundown, and then we back off and let Good Samaritan take over.
Okay. When the defendant told you that she hit him, did that have any significance to you?
No, sir.
Did it reconcile with the injuries that you saw before you that Mr. O'Keefe was suffering from?
No, sir.
And so at that point, was that information insignificant in perspective of your care?
Objection. Sustained.
Okay. What role did that information play in your care after the defendant told you she hit him? How did that contribute or not contribute to what you were doing?
It really didn't help at the time. Again, I wasn't able to chase anything down from that. I just kind of took it, noted it, and moved on with my aspect of the cardiac arrest.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity at any point to see any video of that morning taken from any source, a police car, dash cam?
Yes, sir.
Nora, I'd like to introduce a video stream.
Okay. So this will be in evidence? There are agreements with some of the evidence already?
I believe there's no objection, but I don't want to speak for the defense.
There's no objection.
Okay, thank you. Yes, you can show it.
And for the record, if I may note, this is Cruiser 683 Stream 2. I'm sorry. It is Cruiser 683 Stream 2. I'm going to ask to play a portion of it that's relevant to Mr. Nuttall. Ms. Gillum, if you would please move to 6:11 a.m. Please stop the video. Mr. Nuttall, do you see the red lights reflecting on the left?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what those red lights are?
Presumably those would be ambulance 1.
Yeah, so not what you presume. Do you know what they are, sir?
And those are the lights for ambulance 1.
Do you see the weather conditions as it's depicted on this video?
Yes, sir.
Oh, as you stood outside, was it same or different to how it appears on this video?
That is the same.
When you look to the left, you see a straight line about an inch or two from the left of the screen. Do you know what that item is?
Sorry, sir. Repeat the question.
If you look to the left of the screen,
Yep.
you'll see a straight item from the bottom halfway up the picture. Do you know what that item is on
I
the
believe
video?
that's a flagpole, sir.
Do you see a little bit of movement of bodies near that flagpole?
At the present time, no.
Okay. Could we continue to play, please?
Yep, there they are.
Could you stop, please? Did you see the first person in line now behind the person with in front of the person with the blue hat?
I'm sorry, sir. Can you back it up like 10 seconds?
Certainly. Keep going, please. Do you know who that person is?
I believe that's me, sir.
Okay. Could you please continue? Is this your first assessment?
Yes, sir. This is ascertaining any signs of life or breathing.
Is that you approaching?
Yes, sir.
Could you stop, please? After informing your return, is that after firefighter Flamati called you?
So right after that, when I turned around, that was when Tony said, "Hey, we're working this."
Okay. Please continue. Stop, please. And do you see a person come over to where you are?
Yes, sir.
Is it at that point or another moment when the defendant said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
It was right there, sir.
Could you continue, please? Could you stop for a moment? There's no voices or noises from people coming through that audio. When you were there that night, throughout the event, was it silent or were people speaking? Did you hear people speaking?
There was, as I noted when I got out of the truck, there was quite a bit of screaming. It was quite chaotic. The wind was also a factor, but there were people around. They were speaking within themselves too, but there was screaming, there was wind, and there was different side conversations as well.
And when you were working on Mr. O'Keefe, were you having conversations with your colleagues?
Yes, sir.
They're not picked up on the audio?
No, sir.
Please continue. Sir, are you still at the flagpole?
Yes, sir. I'm kneeling at the head of the patient.
Are you include,